excited he's here, kind of assessing where he's at, and then blessed Austin out of Rutgers, drafted out of the Jets, been with the Seahawks. He was out. We've worked him out, but he's here. And then Matthew Trickett, who was a kicker, rookie that we had in a rookie minicamp. So those are the 7 guys, along with the 90 that are on our roster that'll be out there.
Just with Eddie specifically, did you know when he came out of retirement this was going to
Yeah, I'm constantly in communication with Eddie. So, again, Mike, everybody is at different points in their career. And the one thing we're going to be, if you're going to criticize us for being too conservative, but when a guy hasn't played 2 of the last 3 years as he's working himself back into shape, we're trying to be smart. So I know that could be subjective, but that's what we feel comfortable with Eddie, and look forward to training camp and getting him out there and letting him compete. Same thing, and we'll see. We'll obviously won't make those, like with Caleb, those will be assessed right before we start camp, but we feel pretty good about where everybody's at. Obviously Avery's the one that we talked about last week, that there'd be nothing here in the short term with Avery.
Wait, just with Caleb, he has an Achilles.
Sure.
But that seems like a pretty quick recovery potentially.
We're just gonna, again, everybody's body's different. I mean, I know you took a long time to come back from your knee, but
It's a very long time.
and so with Caleb, again, we'll just assess. But I'm optimistic, and I hate to put that out there, so I'm not gonna give you a date, but certainly trending in a positive direction.
The next week individually means different things for different guys, but for the team, what do you hope to get accomplished these next few days?
Zach, the same thing. We look at this as a build-up phase, and guys are at different points. Some guys have at different workout programs, but that's what it is. I mean, contrary to, I was asked last week, we put the pads on, we can't. That was asked by a legacy writer. So this is just, it's non-contact, it's a passing camp, it's a build-up. It's basically a extension of OTAs. You can do a little bit more in terms of meetings, you get the physicals, assess certain areas, but that's what it'll be. It's just another phase. We'll throw some other situational stuff in there, and then obviously there's a break. And so that's been our intent the whole time. That's what we call this time of year. It's a build-up, it's a passing camp, non-contact, and then as we get into training camp, obviously we'll be in the training phase there, building up for the season.
Where is Pitts at in his build-up to camp?
Who? You say Fitz or Kyle?
Kyle.
Kyle? Feel good. I mean, the same thing with all these guys. Feel good about where he's at.
We were talking to Grady last week, and he made the comment that having Calais Campbell around is really special to him, especially considering that Calais chose to come here. When you kind of think about the decision for a guy like Calais to come here, what does that, I guess, mean in the context of having that guy choose to be in Atlanta?
Well, I think it, speaks, a lot to what we've been building here. It's a place that people want to come to work, and that excites you. Obviously when you get in the free agency, I think with things being equal, we've got a lot to sell, and you also want people who want to be here. Same thing with Bud Dupree. Bud could have gone other places, and we're excited to have Bud, but with all these guys, when things are pretty even with David, a lot of people, if you're cynical, I don't think anybody's ever going to turn down $2 million less. I don't know if I've ever seen that. But when things were equal, Tori, we feel good about what we have to offer, and it'd be like I said a couple months ago. There's going to be a lot of good competition in this camp, and we feel good about where we're at. I know everybody's optimistic this time of year, but it's been a productive spring for us, and looking forward. We'll get away for a little bit, but I'm excited about training camp.
Yeah, what have just been your early impressions of Scotty Miller, and how valuable is that speed that he brings?
Yeah, everybody's different. So obviously Scotty is an instinctive player. We know him pretty well. He's been in our division. He's fast. It's legit. You can feel it even this time of year when it is a passing camp. I mean, his speed's real. But I think over the years, I think he's an instinctive player. I've seen a lot of that. So. Again, he's excited. We got a group of guys in here. Those guys are doing a good job in the receiver room, and I'm excited about training camp as well.
Hey, Coach, I want to ask about your running back room with Cordero Patterson. You think about how valuable he's been in different roles over the past couple of years, and now you draft a running back. How does that affect your approach with Cordero moving forward?
He's a big part of our offense. So, again, whatever room we put him in, I've said this many times, whether they're in the tight end room, receiver room, I mean, we've got a really versatile group. I think you're seeing a lot of that come out of high school football and how skilled these players are. CP's another guy. I mean, he's done a lot of jobs. His role in 21 was very different at the start of 22. And, I'm not going to get too specific in it. It'll play itself out. But I'm excited CP's still here. It looks good. And that's a good problem to have when you got guys that are versatile. I mean, the way, if you go back and look how he was using in 21, very different. And it's just about it. Some of those out of necessity and where we're at last year. He was more traditionally as a running back. So those are good problems to have. You get into certain personnel packages, whether it's him or it's Bijan, certainly Tyler. I mean, John who can go back there and run the football if we have to. So it gives us a lot of flexibility and a lot of different formations and whatever you want to call the personnel groups. We can play an empty. We can play what looks like 10 personnel. We can play what looks like 22, 21, 12. So that's fun. And he's certainly a valuable person to this program, and we're excited CP's still here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Kind of following on that a little bit, is the amount of versatility you have offensively, is this kind of when you started dreaming up offense, what you thought you were aiming toward?
Yeah, it's a good question. Certainly, I think it helps. I mean, the way we play, I mean, we don't stay stationary. We're not, there's a lot of stuff you see pre-snap, and you've got to have smart, instinctive players to do that. And I think it makes it hard. And some of those is certain things in my past experiences help. And then just kind of as we've evolved, and, that may change in 2 years or whatever, you hope as you sustain success, like we're going to keep our core values, but we're always looking to adapt and evolve. And even in our short time here, we have done that. I think there's a lot of conventional wisdom that says, oh, you're running the football. Go back and look how we ran the football in Tennessee and how we ran the football last year. Completely different. We didn't do all the pistol and the zone read and some of the stuff that we've evolved to. Personnel, it's fun, and we'll continue to try to stay ahead and evolve, and it'll look different this year in how we deploy our personnel groups and how we want to attack. There's always trends going on, how people try to defend you. So those are the games within the games, and we got a lot of smart football players on this team. So, the biggest thing too is about staying healthy. You look at a lot of times this year, as it's ranking season, list season, whatever you want to call it. You get to the summer, people are bored. You got to fill airtime, so you get a lot of lists. The thing you got to be aware in the NFL is you need depth. You need to have contingency plans because it's unfortunate, but every team's a key injury or two away from being, top 5 of the draft. So that's why depth is important and being able to problem solve and adapt. And we feel good about our depth, certainly going into training camp right now.
I know you're on social media all the time trying to.
I'm on Mike Rothstein's burner account.
Getting rid of the bots out there. I know it's important to you. Your running back CP. I don't know if there's a free agent out there that he does not want to bring to this team.
He's a master media manipulator. He's playing chess, and people are following him playing checkers. And
I think he's got a future GM in this league.
well, I don't know. I would argue that you got to maybe it'd be a Premier League GM, right? Did they have budgets? So maybe, I know it's a hot button, but depending on who's backing your team in certain leagues, maybe they let you spend more than others. So certainly in the NFL, there's a salary cap, so I don't know. That's a good subjective. That'd be a good question for social media. Are you on TikTok? Are you on Twitter? What's your forum of choice? Twitter. I thought you were a TikTok guy, but well, you never know. Nobody's judging.
All right, we can get rolling with CP as Man United's new general manager there.
Yeah.
With what y'all done on, I know there's been a lot of talk about some of the offensive moves and some of the talent y'all brought in over the last couple of years. What y'all have done defensively with this past offseason with finally having some, what were you looking to do with that? I know it's early in the process, but what are you seeing from that, and how confident of you that that's been obviously a weakness of this team for a number of years now, and to kind of step that up?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've invested heavily on that side of the football, you know, it's where you invest too. You know, you look at it, and we've invested some early capital in some offensive players, and then, you know, obviously, some of those mid-veterans, or, you know, we've got some guys like Calais or Bud, different parts in their career. It's important, you know, as you're trying to have a complete team and where we're at. And we've got some good guys that are young guys that will continue to push, take another step with TQ Graham, Arnold Ebikadi, you know, D'Angelo Malone, you know, Zoe, you know, he's been in the league, but Zoe's, you know, still, he's 27 years old. Lorenzo Carter is still prime age. And so we've got a good mix. And then you've got Grady, you've got David, a lot of guys in there. So we've got depth up front, and then linebacker versatility, you know, where the game's played. You know, we feel good. I mean, you actually look at us, if you're looking from like that coach's view, I mean, it does. I mean, we look pretty heavy up front, but we've got guys that can run. I mean, Troy's as fast as any running back in this league, give or take a couple guys. That speed's real at that size, and Caden and Mike Walker's got length, and so it gives you some unique matchups as other teams are trying to deploy, right? They got backs they want to put out in space and run option routes on you, and to be able to match that. And then we've got some corners with length, you know, what are trying to defend. And so we feel good about our depth. The key is trying to stay healthy and keep developing guys. But we've got a good mix of young guys that have played a lot of significant snaps for us, and you hope that experience carries over. We get guys in the middle part of their career, guys we signed in free agency, obviously Jesse, to go along with a lot of those other guys on the back end. So that's the name of the game. You know, when you're playing 17 games and every time you're trying to prepare, you've got to prepare for the long haul. That depth's going to come up. You may have a week where you're short a corner or two, and if you don't have depth and you're in a matchup with a team that's got three really good wideouts, that'll be hard to problem solve. So that's what we're trying to build.
I know it's a ramp-up period, but when you talk about these off-season veteran additions that you've brought in, how do you feel their presence felt this time of year?
Well, I mean, I give a guy like David Animata. I mean, David's a guy that you really feel the connection him and Grady are making. You know, there's so much that goes on. There's so much pre-snap stuff. So even if you had a guy that was a traditional 3 or traditional nose, depending on what you wanted to do in the front, people move the tight end so much to try to change the strengths on you. So you really got to be able, when you're inside from tackle to tackle, got to play it. So there's a lot of communication that goes on. So you feel that chemistry. And I always think that leadership needs to be authentic. And a guy like David, I mean, you know, where he's at in his career, it's those habits that you respect. Even Jesse, you know, everything that, you know, depending on who you talk to him, and Jesse was obviously a big free agent target, but those habits are real. And so you feel their presence. Guys kind of gravitate towards them. They're trying to learn how we operate and their role. But there's a lot of ways you feel them on a day-to-day, just watching the consistency.
I'm curious, with Bud Dupree, what did you identify in free agency that you thought he could bring, and kind of what was your pitch to him as far as how he could fit in?
Choose my words carefully here. Bud's a physical football player. I kind of like that. He'll set an edge. You know, a guy who wants to be here. He fits our culture. You know, going on the other side, you know, when I've coached against Bud and watching some of the things he brings to the table, you know, it's another guy I value his experience. Bud's a tone setter. That's putting it nicely.
So, Coach, this is kind of drilling down because we talk a lot about the rookies and kind of what you're looking to see out of them, or even some of the veterans, especially during this bridge time. But what about maybe the second-year players? I know Desmond Ritter was talking about how the game is slowed down for him, and he's starting to see what that looks like in voluntary OTAs and minicamp. AK talked about, you know, one skill set that he's kind of brought to the table for year two. Kind of what are you looking to see in them in this, we'll call it this bridge time from voluntary to training camp?
Yeah, I think guys that, you know, if they stay in that right mindset to continue to improve, whether they're going into year 16, and certainly there's a lot of gains have been made. I mean, you could see it with Richie Grant, and even TQ last year from year 1 to year 2. They made significant jumps. Certainly looking for those guys in that last year's class to do that too. And, you know, I think that experience, taking that next step, certainly will help. Those experiences, Des has a lot of a lot of starts. That's the hardest thing to replicate at the hardest position to me in all pro sports is at quarterback. I mean, you've seen a lot of vaporware sold, come and go from virtual reality. Everybody's trying to solve that problem. How do you develop quarterbacks that you got to play? And so, maybe I'm the odd person out, but I think a developmental league is important. I think those reps matter. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but with Dez, he's got a lot of starts, and then obviously they adapt into the NFL. It does, you only get comfortable in a scheme, but those reps matter. And so same thing with AK. It's such a long year for these rookies, and we try to aim the program to understand how long it is. It's the longest year of their career. We talked about this going from the All-Star game, the track circuit, with the pre-draft workouts, the combine, all that stuff. So hopefully, really short answer, significant gains.
I don't know how much time you spent with David, but clearly he made an impression you mentioned the habits. What did you see in him that stood out, that had your attention in that positive manner?
He was a pain in the ass to game plan against when I was in Tennessee, and you have to bleep that out, but that's a huge compliment. And so, a lot of times if you study the history, there's a lot of mistakes have been made in free agency sometimes, and you're trying to gather a lot of information. You'll never be perfect, but you feel like you got a pretty good understanding, especially in your division. And I'd argue too that over the years, I think if you go back in some of New England's runs, they had pretty good success on some of those guys that they signed from their division. Wes Welker, those guys. It certainly helps. But David, I've been trying to scheme against him 4 times. 19 in Tennessee. You hear it, just listen to your players. Who are the guys that they hate blocking? So if you get those guys, and hopefully David continues to take another step. But glad he's on a Falcons logo, not a Saints logo.
Just to confirm really quickly, will TQ be out there today?
He will.
He will?
Yeah, so the 4 guys on the active roster you won't see out there will be Kyle, Caleb, Eddie, and then Avery.
Okay, I was just making sure. When it comes to TQ kind of revving back up a little bit, what do you kind of want to see from him during this time to get back out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times people focus on the physical thing. I know, Michael, you asked about Kyle, physically feel good, but a lot of times too, what I think people forget is the mental part. I mean, you're away, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of time that I don't think it's talked about enough is the mental rehab to get back out there. And a lot of it, barriers are mental hurdles, and everybody's different. But with TQ, it's good to get, we got him out there a little bit last week and get him an individual. Same thing. So hopefully he feels a little more confident as he ramps up going into training camp.
I know obviously the injury and him not being able to finish out the year, I know there are a lot of guys who talked about how unfortunate that was for him because of the way he was playing. When you kind of look back to what he did those first few months last year, what stood out to you about what TQ was doing?
Yeah, I mean, he'd play a lot of snaps. I mean, Grady, that's one thing we hope to have a lot of depth to keep you fresh as a game and really for the long haul of the season. But did a lot of the grunt work, taking on a lot of those hard blocks, you get in those combination blocks. It's not for everybody in there. And I thought TQ did a nice job. Does a good job playing with power, good pad level. Those are things too he's got to get back as he continues to make a leap in year 3. But, it's just mentally, physically, the confidence. But he had a very productive season for us.
Just a couple of other clerical things. Jalen Mayfield, you only see him as a tackle at this point, and with Ogundeji, is he going to be more with the defensive line now, or was that more the cross-training stuff you've done in the past?
Try not to be a smart aleck here, Mike.
Well, I appreciate that.
But anybody, if you're not going to start, and you need to have versatility, because how do you problem solve on game day if you're in the top 8? So you're going to have versatility up front. If you're a one-position guy, you better start. So obviously Jalen, again, just out of necessity, played left guard. But kind of where we're at, where we feel good. And these are conversations too. I mean, the players have a say. These are conversations that we have. But Jalen's been working at right tackle. The versatility. So we'll see. Doing well. See what it looks like in camp. And then Ade, if you really study, that's what so much gets made out of it. And whether you're 3-4 or 4-3, you're going to play 5 down. What are you doing really in the back end? And how do you want to play the run? Are you a 2-gap? Do you gap and a half? Are you single gap defense, you know, where do you want to fit? It's just a math game upside. So whether you're a jack linebacker, Sam linebacker, some defenses have called him Leo, closed in, open in, you're an edge player. And so how you want to break it up, and, you know, we spend a lot of time cross-training guys in certain things or certain job descriptions they may have to do. You know, some 3-4, that Sam linebacker drops more than others. Some teams that are 3-4, they bring 5 all the time. He's an on-the-line player and has been that, so that's not unfamiliar. And guys like him and AK and D'Angelo, you know, they take on different roles. So even last year in a different scheme, you know, depending on what the call was in motion, you're gonna have some looks that are gonna look like 4-3. I'm gonna take 4 guys down, 3 guys behind them, and one of those guys may be your on the ball backer, depending on the formation of the call. So you're gonna see that. I mean, he's been more of the edge guy anyways. So that really hasn't changed. Does that specifically, I know that's a clerical question, but gave you a longer answer. Josh, you got nothing?
I got nothing.
Kind of quiet. You doing all right?
Yeah, how about you?
Great. Thank you. Oh, sorry.